Let me tear off a couple of sheets of aluminum foil, and we're just going to wrap these in aluminum foil, and then we're going to put them in the oven, and we're going to bake them until they're soft. And sweet potatoes sometimes take a while, so we're probably going to need to bake these for, I would say, at least an hour to an hour and a half. So let's get these wrapped up in a 375-degree oven. You do not have to wrap them in foil, but I like that it makes it a little moist. The skin stays a little moister, and you can peel off the skin a little easier so that you can get the whole potato out of there. So we're going to get these in the oven. Let me just put these here, and we'll get them in the oven. Now, we've got a large skillet preheating on medium-high heat, and I have got 6 boneless pork loin chops. Now, I chose the boneless pork loin. Now, you could use, in the grocery store, in the meat case, you can get the mixed pork chops. Those are delicious. I've done it with those also. You can get, just the pork loin, the center cut pork loin with the bone on, whatever kind of pork chop that you like. This is one of those cases where you do not want to get a pork chop that is really thin. These are about a 1/2 inch, maybe even, I'd say 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch thick. If you use the little tiny thin pork chops, they will dry out on you before you can, finish your dish, and they will be tough and hard to chew. But if you get the 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch pork chops, they stay moist because we're going to be covering them and using the steam to cook our pork chops after we brown them, and that way they can stay moist with the sauerkraut, underneath them, and we'll get to that. So I want to take some salt and pepper, and I'm going to just salt the one side of this, and then I will salt the other side and pepper the other side when we get it down. Fresh cracked pepper on one side. And like I said, this is probably my favorite way to have pork chops, but I'm a huge sauerkraut fan. I love sauerkraut. So if you like sauerkraut, this is the dish for you. We want to take a little bit of extra virgin olive oil and just put it in the bottom of our pan. And what we're going to do is just brown our pork chops first. Put the seasoned side down in your skillet. Place them where you want them to stay, because you don't want to move them too quickly, because what you do when you move them is you tear the meat and you get rid of that beautiful caramelization that you're trying to get. So get them in there wherever you want them to stay, because the protein in the meat will latch onto the skillet. And if you try to move them, they will tear. So we want to just put those in. Then we're going to season the other side with a little bit of salt. I would not use a lot of salt because we're going to be using sauerkraut, and sauerkraut is a little bit on the salty side. So let's put some pepper on there. And we're just going to let them brown on one side. Then we're going to flip them over and let it brown on the other side. And like I said, make sure that when you buy your pork chops, if your store that day, whenever you go, only has really, really thin pork chops, if you will get, you can buy now a good pork sirloin roast, or a lot of times they will put the whole pork loin on sale. If you will ask your butcher at your local grocery store to cut the pork chops for you, they will, and they will take that whole pork loin and they'll cut it into like 3/4 inch chops, and then maybe you can have a roast too, because sometimes those can be pretty big. So, if all you can find are the little thin, be sure that you do ask and try to get, something that's a little bit thicker. Now, for our sauerkraut, we are going to be using Bavarian sauerkraut. I know it sounds fancy and it sounds hard to find, but you will find it right along in your grocery store, right alongside where you get the, the sauerkraut that you buy for other dishes. The regular sauerkraut, alongside it will be a product called Bavarian sauerkraut. Now, what Bavarian sauerkraut is a regular traditional sauerkraut with caraway seeds added. And caraway seeds and pork go hand in hand. It's absolutely delicious when you mix the combination. So I have 2 cans of Bavarian sauerkraut. I have not drained my sauerkraut. You want to just take the lid off and leave it, because you want the liquid that's in the can. Don't drain the sauerkraut. Let's check our pork chops. Nope. Okay, I want you to see this. You see, well, I can tell you, but They don't want to let go of the skillet. That means they're not ready to turn. When they stick like that and you got to tug really hard to get them loose from the skillet, they're not ready to turn because they need a few more minutes to cook. So we're just going to kind of let those hang out for just about another, I would say 30 seconds, and then they'll be ready to flip. This is one of those dishes that is an absolutely fantastic thing to cook in the fall when you can get some fresh apples, like some fresh McIntosh apples or something, and you can saute some apples. Apples and pork go hand in hand, and they go delicious together. And this is one of those dishes, if you wanted to make this ahead, brown your pork chops in a skillet, just like I'm doing. Get a crock pot. Put your sauerkraut in the bottom of your crock pot. Lay your chops and all the drippings over top of that. Set it on low in the morning when you go to work. And when you get home, you will have delicious, moist, tender pork chops with some sauerkraut for your supper. And then you could just add a little bit of a green salad or, whatever you like to go with it. You could even put, if you have 2 crock pots, something I've done in the past, and it's yummy because sometimes I don't, when you get home from work, you don't have time to cook. You could take your sweet potatoes, don't put them in the foil, but take your sweet potatoes and put them in another crock pot and turn it on high and just let them put, just maybe, I'd say an inch, if not a half inch to an inch of water down in the bottom of your pan, and put the lid on there on your crock pot, and your sweet potatoes can cook in your crock pot all day long too. So let's check our pork chops. There we go. Now see, if you wait just a second, they will release. If you try to turn them when they're still gripping really tight to the pan, you are going to tear your meat. Like that one is still a little bit on that one side, so I'm going to kind of leave him for a minute here. Let's see, there we go. And we're just going to brown these up. I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, we're going to take our pork chops out, get our sauerkraut in, and we're going to start on dessert. I'll be right back with you in just a minute. Now we're going to take our pork chops out of the skillet and just put them on a plate for a minute. You want to leave all those yummy drippings down in the bottom. And my skillet is twisting on me here. Let me hold it. Look at those beautiful pork chops. Oh, do they not just look yummy? Good, good, good. We're going to take our 2 cans. Now this will splatter, so be very careful. We're going to take our 2 cans of sauerkraut, and we're going to put that in the bottom of our pan. Spread that out a little bit. I love the smell of sauerkraut. I'm a big cabbage fan. I like cabbage in any way, shape, or form. So sauerkraut, to me, is just delicious. Now, we're going to take some caraway seeds, some extra caraway. Now, your Bavarian sauerkraut has caraway in it, but I'm going to add a little bit of extra caraway because I just like it. You don't have to do this step if you don't want to, but I really like the flavor of caraway seeds. So I always add about a teaspoon or so on top of my sauerkraut. Then what we're going to do is place our pork chops back on top of our sauerkraut and caraway. Turn our heat down to like almost to a simmer, low, really low. We're going to add just a touch of water. I'd say about half a cup or so for the pan. And then I'm going to put a lid on it. And we're just going to kind of let it hang out and do its thing. And those chops will continue to cook on top of that sauerkraut and be absolutely delicious. Now, over the break, I got a pan of water that I'm just bringing to a boil. I've got about 2 inches of water. This is my pasta pot, but I'm not going to cook pasta. We're going to be cooking some frozen vegetables. We're going to make a broccoli and cauliflower gratin to go along with our pork chops. So, let's get started on our get some cheeses grated up here for our gratin. Well, no, let's get started on our pudding first. Let's get our pudding made. For dessert today, we are going to be having, now normally when I make this, I use coconut macaroons, and we normally, like I said, we would be making a coconut macaroon parfait, but I could not find in my grocery store any coconut macaroons. Probably if I had found them, I'd have ate them all before I got here anyway. I love them. But so we're going to substitute just a coconut cookie. That's the wonderful thing about cooking. If you have a recipe and maybe you can't find one particular component, as long as it's not a major thing. I mean, obviously, if you're making pork chops, you can't find pork. That's a different story. But in a thing like this, when you're making a dessert or, you know, a fruit-based dish, you can change out. Today I could not find coconut macaroons, but I did find some coconut cookies. So I thought, well, you know, that would have the same flavor. It hits the same bells and whistles in your mouth. So I'm just going to use the little coconut bars today, and those are delicious too. So we're going to make, now you could substitute, I'm using coconut cream pudding. The instant pudding that you buy in the grocery stores, I'm using coconut cream, but you could use vanilla if you wanted to. You could substitute any kind of a flavor that you like. I just happen to love the flavor of coconut, so we're using coconut cream today. I'm going to slowly add in some milk. I'm going to add about probably 1 3/4 to 2 cups of milk. Just do it slowly. Let me turn my speed up a little bit. And I'm just scraping down the sides of my bowl, our wonderful coconut cream pudding. And I've added about 1 3/4, maybe 1/4 or so. Add just a touch more. I'm going to let that set up because I want my pudding to be kind of thick. If you've watched this program, you'll notice that I use a lot of the instant puddings. I make a lot of desserts that have fruit in them. You know, I'm a believer that you can incorporate healthy eating into many things, and this is a good way to get your family to eat fruit. You know, that's one of the things that a lot of children don't get enough of. A lot of adults don't get enough of. And if you incorporate fresh fruit into your desserts, then, you know, that's a good way to get fresh fruit into your diet. So I do a lot of that. I use a lot of the prepared pound cakes, a lot of, you know, cookies and macaroons and things like that you can buy in the grocery store. Number one, it cuts down on some of your time, but it's also very, very delicious. So there's our coconut, and I can see the little flakes of coconut down in there, and it just looks yummy. So let me put this over here. And we're going to take our little parfait dishes, and we're going to take these coconut bars, and we're going to crumble up some of the bars. If you can find coconut macaroons, the real soft, you know, the cookie coconut macaroons, it's delicious in this, but I just couldn't find any today. We're going to take our cookies, and we're going to kind of just break them up and put them in the bottom of our dish. And this is a good way to get your children, like I said, to eat some fruit. Put it with a cookie, they will eat it. Then we're going to take some of our pudding. We're just going to put a little bit of our coconut cream pudding in here. And I'll show you how we're going to build this in just a second. My water has come up to a boil. So I've just got 1 bag of the frozen broccoli and cauliflower. I'm just going to put that in the pan. I'm going to let that go for just about, I would say, 5 minutes or so, because, you know, frozen vegetables don't take that long to cook. We're just going to let those steam while we get back to our parfaits. Now, I've got some beautiful strawberries, and they smell absolutely divine. And we're just going to take our strawberries, if I can get them open here. I rinsed them just right before we started. And we're just going to take our strawberries, and we're going to slice them. Add our strawberries to our dish, and you just build it. If you don't today, maybe the blueberries or the raspberries or, you know, blackberries or something else, kiwi fruit, bananas, any kind of fruit that you like, you could substitute in this dish, and you could make anything that you wanted with it. I'm going to just add lots of fruit. I love fruit. And like I said, this is a good way to get your family, get more fruit in your diet. Add some more cookies on top. We're just going to layer it in there. These little cookies are delicious, by the way. The extra ones that are left in your package with your coffee the next morning, take one of these little coconut cookies and dip down in your coffee. It's wonderful. Take some pudding and add. And you're just building a little parfait. And you can change this out in so many different ways. Use different flavors of pudding. Use different kinds of fruit. You could do it in just so many different ways. And we'll top this off with some beautiful sliced up strawberries. And it's a good way to get your family, get some fiber and some fruit into your family. You've got to vary your diet. You've got to eat different things. I shared the story with you once before. I read a report that said the average household has 10 meals that they eat, and they just eat the same thing over and over and over again. They rotate out those 10 meals, the average house. And, you know, to me, that's just, you know, the world is so full of food and different things that you can try. And I'm just a firm believer it is only food. You know, if you don't like it, then you know, it's okay, but try different things. Venture out, and that's one of the goals of this program, is to get you to try some different type foods that you might think to yourself, I could never cook that, but you can. You can do it in your home. And there's our wonderful little parfaits. Let's just top that off with a little bit of pudding, and they're done, and you can just put those in the refrigerator until you're ready to eat. So let's just, and we'll just show that we can show that it's coconut. Let's just put us one little whole cookie in there. And these are ready to go. Now, our pork chops are cooking. Our vegetables are steaming away. When I come back, I got to take a break. When I come back, we're going to make our gratin, get that in the oven, and wrap up this meal. I'll be right back with you in just a minute. And welcome back. Now, while our pork chops are finishing, we've made our beautiful parfaits. We're going to get started on the gratin. You can use any kind of mixed vegetable blend that you happen to have on hand. The one that I had was broccoli and cauliflower, and I've just used my pasta pot. But you could drain this over a sink too, and I'm just going to drain out all the water. You want to make sure that you drain out the water from your pasta. I'm just using frozen vegetables. They are delicious. The frozen vegetables many times have more vitamins and minerals in them than the fresh if it's out of season, because the fresh has had to travel so far. I mean, if you've got your choice of getting asparagus from Peru or frozen asparagus that's been frozen right at the peak of its ripeness, your frozen's going to have more vitamins and minerals in it. So that's why we're using the frozen vegetables today. And I like to just kind of steam them for about 5 minutes, and just to, get them almost done. Not quite, but almost. Spread them out in your dish. Now, we're going to take a little bit of butter, and we're going to add just some dots of butter over top of our broccoli and cauliflower. And like I said, you could substitute any blend of vegetables that you would have on hand. We just want to put a little bit of butter in there with it. A little more. I like butter. Add just a touch of salt over top. This is a really easy dish to do. And some freshly ground pepper. And we're going to add some cheese. Now we're going to add a mixture of the Colby Jack, which has Colby cheese and Monterey Jack in there. We're going to add this into the vegetables. I'd say that's about half of a cup or so. Then we're going to take just the round buttery crackers that you can buy in any store. You probably have them in your pantry right now. Put a sleeve of them in a Ziploc bag and crush them up. This is a good thing for your children to do if they're with you. Just have them crunch up the crackers. They'll think that's grand. Lots of fun. You want them to be very fine. You want to use the buttery crackers in this particular recipe. And we're just going to crunch them up. You see how we've just got them crunched up real fine. And we're going to put these cracker crumbs over top of our vegetables. And you could, by all means, if you've got fresh vegetables, do this with any kind of fresh vegetable that you have on hand that you like. It would work. And we just want to sprinkle these over the top of our vegetables. Let me get them out of there. Okay. Then we're going to take just a little bit more butter and kind of just scatter pieces of butter over the top of the cracker. You could also melt butter and pour it over the crackers if you wanted to. That piece don't want to stay. There we go. Whichever you wanted to do would be fine. You could melt it or just dot it. Whatever works for you. Then we're going to take a little bit of fresh Parmesan Reggiano cheese. I always get it freshly grated. I don't like the pre-grated stuff. I like the fresh. It has much, much more flavor to it. Use one of these little microplanes that you can get in so many stores now. These are so readily available. And they are so handy for dishes like this where you can just grate right over top. And this is just Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. And a little bit of Romano cheese, just a little bit. These are full flavored cheeses. And they're delicious. And look how good that looks. Then we're going to put this in the oven for about 20 minutes until it's done and golden brown on top, and then we'll be ready to eat. Let's get this in the oven. Preheated to 375 degrees. And just kind of let that bake away. All right, now our sweet potatoes are done. So let's take them out of the foil. And just for ease of working with them, I'm going to put them right down inside this little dish while I work. And we're going to see how see how the skin just stays soft when you, and we're going to just split them in half. Yummy. Now, we've got some butter. Let me switch out here. Some butter that we want to put in our dish. Softened room temperature butter, and I'm going to add some cinnamon to it. Just regular ground cinnamon, and just with the back of your spoon, just kind of see my butter softened. Just kind of work that cinnamon into the butter. This also is good on toast in the mornings. Just cinnamon and butter. Add a little sugar to it, and there you go. But for our sweet potatoes, we're just going to see how we've just got that mixed together. Then take a spoonful of your cinnamon butter and add it to your wonderful potato. And there is your cinnamon buttered new sweet potato. We'll just put that right on our plate. Yum. That looks delicious, and that butter just kind of melt down in there and be delicious. And we'll do this other one real quick while we're at it. Bake it in foil. Takes about an hour, hour and a half. 375. Split it down the center, just like that. See, when you wrap it in foil, you see how easy that skin will come off. So when you're eating it, you can get all of the potato and you don't have to waste. And I find many times if you don't wrap it in foil, the skin gets so hard that, you end up really wasting half your potato. So that's why I wrap mine in foil. There's our other one. I'll just be letting that melt down in there. And there's our other sweet potato. Now, let's check our pork chops because they are done. Let me show you what we have here. Let's turn them off. And we've got some wonderful pork chops and sauerkraut, which is just delicious. And to serve this, just kind of move one of your pork chops off your kraut there. get some of the sauerkraut in the bottom. Add it to your plate. And then take one of your beautiful pork chops and place over top of that. And then we'll add just a little bit of fresh chopped parsley to that. Let me get my knife. Just a little bit for color and flavor. You eat with your eyes first. And when you see something that looks beautiful, your taste buds automatically go, hey, that just, you know, I very well may like that. So always make your food pretty. And sometimes that means just adding a little touch of color to the top of it. Just adds so much to it. Now our gratin is done. We took that out of the oven, so let's get a little bit of our broccoli and cauliflower gratin and put just a spoonful of that on our plate. And there you go, the perfect little feast for your family. We've got Bavarian pork chops with sauerkraut, sweet potatoes with cinnamon butter, and a broccoli and cauliflower gratin. I hope that you'll try these recipes, and I'll see you next time on Everyday Neighbor.